Prairie Yard and Garden is a production of the University of Minnesota Morris in cooperation with Pioneer Public Television. Funding for Prairie Yard and Garden is provided in part by Heartland Motor Company, providing service for over 30 years in the heart of truck country. Heartland Motor Company, we have your best interest at heart. Farmers Mutual Telephone Company and Federated Telephone Cooperative, proud to be powering ASERA. Mark and Margaret Yackel Jolene, in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. ShalomHill.org.
People often ask me where we get the ideas for Prairie Yard and Garden shows. Well, sometimes people will call, email, and even write with suggestions. Last year, I got a letter suggesting we visit a beautiful yard near Pelican Rapids. I called the homeowner who said, yes, we could come and see her American hodgepodge garden. Let's go explore and see what she means by that. The dictionary defines hodgepodge as a mixture of different things or a confused mixture. Today we are visiting with Marilyn and Donovan Folden near Pelican Rapids, Minnesota, who have a mixture of plants that is definitely not confused, but instead creates a show place. Welcome, Marilyn.
Thank you.
How long have you lived in this beautiful spot?
We have been here 5 years.
When you arrived, were there a lot of flowers here? I mean, when you moved here, were there a lot of flowers in place?
No, we built the house, and from there we built the flower beds.
So then, how did you get started planting flowers? Where did you start?
I started over by the birch tree there with that just little corner, and from there I put it all around where I thought I wanted flowers. So that's how it started, and then the other 2 flower beds came from that.
So it just kind of grew from there. When you lay out the hoses, do you spray paint along them, or do you just leave them there and then what happens? Does Donovan take over from there, or what?
Well, he does do the clearing of the sod, and then we refine it as we go along so that it's the shape that we want.
How did you learn how to place the plants? I mean, did you read, or tell me how you came up with the beautiful combinations you put together?
Well, I do a lot of looking through magazines, or all the garden magazines I can get a hold of. And as far as the lay of the land is kind of how I made the flower beds, but the placement is sometimes just whenever there's a spot, I have to put a plant in there.
Do you use edging at all, or have you used edging to keep the grass out of the garden?
We did have edging, but this last year we took it out because the grass would just grow underneath it or over the top. So we just took it out, and then we used an edger to make a real fine line, and kind of been keeping it that way since.
Do you mulch your plants at all to help keep the weeds down?
No, I haven't. I put flies in there from the mower, the grass, and that's supposed to be good for your soil.
So then you do a lot of weeding by hand then, obviously. Do you have like an irrigation system here too?
Yes, we do. We put them in before we did the flower beds, and so we wouldn't be covering a sprinkler head up with dirt.
When you do the plant placement, do you try to pick plants that will bloom in the spring and in the summer and in the fall too?
Yes, definitely. I like to have something going at all times.
I noticed that you use some unusual plants too. You know, ones that I wouldn't normally see in the flower bed. I think I saw some vegetables.
Yes, I do plant onions in my one bed, and spinach and Swiss chard this year, and of course I have some herbs up by the front of the house.
And when we walked in up by the front of the house, I saw that you actually have a shade area too.
Yes, very small area, but there's some nice hostas. They kind of grew very large this year.
Well, we had more moisture this spring, so that probably got them going. And then in that shade area, I noticed that there were some real pretty stones, kind of almost like a little pathway of stones in there. Was that for looks, or is there a reason that those were there?
Probably both, but mostly for the gutters up right there, so the water just comes straight down, and so that helps for erosion.
Okay, so it helps to keep the soil from washing away, but it looks really pretty too. That was a good idea to do that.
Well, I kind of picked that up in Arizona when they do their dry gulches, they call them.
Marilyn, do you fertilize, and if you do, how often and what do you use?
I use a slow release fertilizer in the spring, but that's about it as far as fertilizer, and then an organic stuff that we use on the grass and the flowers that helps deter the deer.
Then do you deadhead?
Yes, I certainly do.
What is that? If you can, because some of our viewers might not know what that means. So what does that mean?
Well, I pick off the spent bloom so that more will come. And sometimes when they're totally done blooming, I cut it back and it will rebloom.
And then, do you have any trouble with deer or rabbits?
Well, the deer, we have planted clover down in the meadow there so that they will go down there to eat instead of come up here and munch on the plants. And there's a salt block down there which helps too. And then up and over in the other part of the property we also have clover there so that they change their route. Because in the wintertime they go hither and yon, so we have to change them when we come back in the spring.
So you kind of give them a buffet someplace else.
Yeah.
I thought it was very interesting that I saw you have a tall verbena. Did you say that that helps with the deer too?
It does in the springtime when the tulips come up. If I have those planted where the tulips have been, they don't like that scratchy stems from the verbena, so they leave it alone.
Do you leave those stems there over the winter and into the spring then? And then do you wait to cut them down?
Well, pretty much till they're quite high, and then I pull them out, and then I use the liquid fence if the deer are still bothersome.
Some of our viewers may not be familiar with the tall verbena, or Verbena bonariensis it's called. Is that a perennial, or does that tend to reseed itself?
It tends to reseed itself very well.
Okay.
I pull more of those out than anything, but I do like them in the flower garden because they do add that height.
And they're also a very, very good pollinator plant too, is that correct?
Butterflies love them.
There you go. Well, and I noticed that. What all visitors do you have to this beautiful setting here? I'm sure that you get butterflies.
Yes, we do. We get a lot of bees and butterflies and birds, of course. I don't know if the birds enjoy the flowers, but I do have bird houses up and bird feeders, so I enjoy watching the birds.
Well, and that's what I was noticing, that you do seem to have bird houses and other structures. What are some of the structures that you have incorporated into your flower beds?
Well, I have a couple of arbors there that I plant the clematis and the hyacinth bean, which I really like a lot. They grow real tall and have that purple pod and purple flower. And then also my iron structures here that I put together with gears and such from the junkyard. And then the one I put the sand in there too, and whenever with sprinkles, of course, we get water in there too, so the birds and the butterflies like that.
What a great idea. And then you've used that for a base for your gazing globe, I see. Mm-hmm. And then I saw that there was kind of like it looked like a bird bath too. Is that still a bird bath?
No, I use that like a planter because that doesn't hold water anymore. So I've seen that in magazines. I kind of gleaned that off magazines, but it's fun to do.
What a great idea. So it must have gotten a crack in it. Instead of throwing it out, you just repurposed it then.
Yes.
Oh, and it looks very, very nice. And then it looks like you have a rock garden down at the end too.
Yes, I have mostly rocks, but there's a few plants in there that are low growing, and so I can see over the top and see the garden on the other side.
Marilyn, what are some of your favorite plants, maybe one or two for each of the seasons?
In the spring, I like the daffodils and the tulips, and then comes the iris usually and the peonies. Summer is the phlox and the lilies, and then also in the fall I like the rudbeckias and the echinaceas.
Do you have many native plants?
I do have some, a cup plant and joe pye and ironweed and butterfly weed and lead plant.
And all of those that you listed, I'm sure, are just the butterflies love to come and visit those too.
Especially the joe pye, when that's going, they really enjoy that.
Where do you get a lot of your plants from?
I usually make the rounds of the local nurseries in the spring, so I get a lot of things from there. I do order some things from like the bulbs from catalog.
Do you get some from friends too? Do you divide and exchange with other people?
Yeah, so I do that too, especially with my one friend, LaBelle. And I have a few plants from my mother that I still have.
And I'll bet you every time you work with them or see them, you think of her too.
That's true.
Do you collect seed at all and then take and sprinkle them out where you want them of some of the varieties?
Yes, I do that too. I got a combination of everything, I guess, but I try to put the flower heads just where I want them in the fall, and then in the spring I kind of go through them to separate them out a little bit, and because they do come kind of crowded when they first show up.
Sometimes you have to be out there thinning them too, and to get them so that they can grow. Do you cut some of the flowers and bring them inside and use them, or do you use them for church or for events or anything too?
Well, last year I grew dahlias for Donovan's granddaughter's wedding for their reception. They went over very well. I do bring in some, but I have enough outside, so I don't really bring them in too often.
When you started your flower beds and everything, was the soil here quite good?
No, it was mostly sand. And so we did bring in a lot of black dirt, and we also did a lot of composting that we make.
And who does that?
Donovan.
Oh, do you think he'd be willing to show us how he does that?
I think he would.
All right. Donovan, I hear that you're the person in charge of the compost, so can you please tell us how you do it?
Yeah, well, I'm so proud to be that part of Marilyn because the rest is all her thing. Well, I start out with compost with other kind of organic material I can get. Leaves, I would prefer leaves, but there are no leaves around now. And grass and a little manure, and I put it in a pile, and then I add it to whatever I had from before. This has been here for a year, and this has just been here for this summer. So I will incorporate that as I can.
Do you have soil that you haul in?
There's some times when I have some black dirt, but there's very little black dirt. This is turned into, this is leaves. I pick up leaves from all over that have been there all summer long. Okay. And then I get their leaves. I have a trailer, I pick up their leaves and grass are at one time were like this. And so then I keep rolling it in with my bucket tractor until I get something like that pile over there, which is more complete. And that's from all year long. That's been that way.
Okay. So how old is that pile over there?
That's a year old.
Okay. And what kind of manure do you use? Does it matter which kind?
It does to me, because if you use turkey manure, it's very, very potent. but it damages your equipment. But I use just cow manure. I like, there's a little straw mixed in it, and that's what I like to use. And that's how I do it. Just start out with a big pile of leaves in the fall. It's usually in the fall, so that I did that last fall. From last fall, that's how long that takes, because it has to generate enough heat to break down the organic stuff.
I bet the neighbors like to see you come if you collect their leaves, huh?
Well, I do. They do. I do collect the neighbors' leaves and grass from all summer, and then I mix that, and then it sits all winter, and then I separate it again in spring. And there should be some left, and something that Marilyn could use.
Okay.
Too. You know, I have different sections. This thing she can't use, but she could use probably that last pile there if she wanted to. She sometimes says, well, I would like some, so I take my bucket and bring it over, and she puts it where she wants it.
How do you know when it's ready?
I could tell by looking at it. There's still a few lumps in there that shouldn't be there. That's some manure from before, and that takes a while to mix in.
Get all broke down and stuff then.
Right.
And then how often do you turn this, or how often do you mix it?
I would like to do it every two months or so, and then keep it, rearrange the whole thing. So then I can tell how much of this is left in it. Then I know that's going to take a year for that. Unless I could get some turkey manure next to it, that would burn it up, but I don't like to use that. It's too strong.
Then do you guys clip in the spring or in the fall, and do you add the clippings like the plant tops and everything, do you put that into this compost pile?
Yeah, I start again with a new fresh line of compost. If this was finished product, then I would still do the same thing and keep adding. And sometimes I'll go on that end and add, and I keep mixing it that way.
Okay, and how do you mix it? Do you mix it by hand?
No, I have a bucket tractor. I have a 2550 subcompact little tractor. I scoop it up and dump it on, and then roll it like you would in the kitchen or something.
And so I suppose then when you use the manure, that provides the fertility to help the bacteria break it all down.
Oh, that and green grass. If I had green grass, I have a thing that picks up green grass, and right now I don't have much to show you as far as just how I do it, but I would love to have a lot of green grass and some manure in this pile, and then I'd start working it around this way. Actually, I take from there and put here, and take from there, and then as this grows, it moves into a more finished, and when it's finished, I put it over there.
When you would use grass like that, do you have to worry about any chemical like weed control on the grass clippings?
Well, I try to stay away from any Roundup or Trimix or any herbicide.
Okay.
But I don't know. I don't think that would. I just try and stay away from it.
You haven't had any trouble with that at all, then?
Not that I know. Actually, as long as Marilyn doesn't complain and wants me to make more compost and get more, I'm satisfied.
Well, and I heard that you use this compost not just for the flower beds, but I think for the garden too, right?
Yeah, if there's any left, then I will get some for the vegetable garden. But usually there's some left for the garden too. We have a nice garden there, and Marilyn has a part of that too. She's there weeding and hoeing when it needs that, and she's there helping me design it like she does her flowers, and what vegetables are there. She has a big part in both the flower garden and the vegetable garden. My part in the flower garden is this.
Well, would it be possible to go see your vegetable garden too?
Oh, sure, I'd be happy to show you.
Let's go see it.
Okay.
I have a question. What are some good tips for pruning trees?
Certainly. There's a few basic things you have to know about pruning trees. One thing is making thinning cuts. Thinning cuts mean that you're cutting back to a branch at least 1/3 the size of the branch you're removing. The other thing is cutting out only about 1/3 of the live tissue in any one growing season. That's a maximum level, is 1/3. If you do less than that, that's great. Cutting outside the branch collar, if you have a branch collar, is really important. And if you don't have a branch collar, I emphasize making the smallest wound possible without leaving a stub. We don't want stubs in trees. They don't seal. The tree has to work hard to compartmentalize that wound much more. And it's just much better aesthetically for the tree to not have stubs in them. I have a 5-step pruning process that I go through and that I've really emphasized with staff and volunteers here at the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum, and I have a little acronym that goes along with it. It's Sand, Struck, Frames, Clear, Ball. Sanitation is number 1, structural pruning, framing, clearance, and balance. Sanitation is the removal of dead material, crossing branches, rubbing branches, etc. Structural pruning is the removal of branches with very narrow branch angles early on in the growth of that tree, especially a large shade tree. Framing is just like if you're framing up a house, or think of frames on a ladder. You have the branches spaced out, and you want the branches spaced out both vertically as well as radially around the trunk of the tree. Generally speaking, we're talking about a central leader tree here. Clearance work is pretty obvious, either for vehicular traffic, pedestrian traffic, mowing, whatever the consideration. Clearance work is essential in part of the pruning. And then balance is the issue of texture in the plant. So using the 1/3 rule of cutting back to something at least 1/3 the size of the branch you're removing, making thinning cuts, and only removing about 1/3, you can utilize a little bit of that balancing to even out the texture and density of the plant overall. One last thing is timing. You don't want to be pruning on trees or shrubs when they're just leafing out in the springtime or when they're going into dormancy in the fall. Otherwise, without any disease or insect considerations, you can go ahead and prune for any of those 5 things: sand, struck, frames, clear, ball, during the middle of the summer, or it's really best during the dormant season.
Ask the Arboretum Experts has been brought to you by the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum in Chanhassen, dedicated to enriching lives through the appreciation and knowledge of plants.
Donovan, your compost obviously is working, because I don't know if I've ever seen tomatoes this big. I'm a little over 5 feet, and they're just about as tall as I am.
Well, they got a shot of compost last fall. Most of the garden did last fall. We had that's why there isn't much to work with up there now.
Okay.
Down there.
How do you keep them up off the ground?
Well, that's Marilyn's idea. She had a cage that her father made for her that she carried along, and then we had extra fencing. So I have cut the fencing in the size, and I made these for her. And when they were just planted, we put the fencing around the tomatoes, and they grew out of it.
Well, and I noticed that you've got a wonderful fence here around the garden, I suppose, to help keep critters out. Did you make this fence?
We did, yes. I didn't hire anybody to do it. The posts I got from up in northern Minnesota. I have some hunting land up there, and there's a lot of scrub oak, and I cut the posts up there and put them in the ground. We have a little auger for the posts, and then we rolled the fence, put up the fence and next to it.
When I really like it, you've got a personal entry right there, but you've also got a bigger gate, so you can actually use your tractor to come in too.
Correct. I had that on both ends, and now that that building is taking up part of the garden, I'm still going to have that, but it's not usable right now. But I can come in and go out with the tractor and do the cultivating in the early stages of the garden.
And I noticed that you don't have much disease on your tomatoes either, and it looks like you've got a watering system. Did you build that?
No, I had a company put that in. It works real good. For each row has a soaker system, and I just turn on each row that I want watered, and it does the job. But that's just this year that we've had that.
And so then in the fall, you'll definitely have to drain those soaker hoses, I would guess, so they don't freeze up, huh?
Correct. We blow it out, and then we just roll it up and put it in the shed.
Well, that is just a really, really great idea. And the nice thing about it is you can water whatever needs it, and whatever doesn't as you harvest, then you can just shut off that area. So that is just wonderful. Donovan, I noticed that here in your vegetable garden, you actually have some flowers too.
Yes, we do. We have Monarda and hollyhocks. And that is Marilyn's ideas for having bees to pollinate and help pollinate the apples and the plums, so, and whatever they pollinate.
Yeah, I'm sure that on the vining crops, the flowering crops, they'll be just whatever, they'll be just wonderful. What a great idea.
Well, she has full of, in fact, in her flower garden, she'll plant onions because she can plant better onions than I do. She plants lettuce, and we just don't know whether it's a flower or lettuce, but they're in there.
Marilyn, do you have any trouble at all with insects or diseases here with your flowers?
Well, I do get some rust on the phlox when it's too damp. And then I have iris borer problem that I'm working on correcting with a granular systemic. And also aphids are prevalent on the rudbeckias.
Yeah, it seems like when the farmers are harvesting, the aphids always get to be a problem, don't they? Do you have tours that people come to see your beautiful yard?
Yes, we do. Mostly from, I'm sorry, Marilyn, but okay. Mostly from people who belong to our garden club. They come and tour.
And then, do you have any plans for the future or things that you want to change or expand?
There's always change in the garden. Well, something dies, you got to fill up that space with something new, or maybe the same type of thing that you like, but there's always changes going on.
If you describe your garden as an American hodgepodge, I think all of us could try to aspire to this because it is so beautiful. Thank you so much for letting us come and see it.
Well, thank you for having us.
Funding for Prairie Yard and Garden is provided in part by Heartland Motor Company, providing service for over 30 years in the heart of truck country. Heartland Motor Company, we have your best interest at heart. Farmers Mutual Telephone Company and Federated Telephone Cooperative, proud to be powering ASERA. Mark and Margaret Yackel Jolene, in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. ShalomHill.org.